All right, we're gonna open the meeting of the Policy Committee for February 10th. And roll call, please.
Hamaji. Hines. Here. Lee. Here. Topper's excused.
Are there any changes to our minutes from January 13th?
No.
All right, seeing none. We'll have them approved. And Jory, are there any residence forum speakers?
No, we have no one today.
Okay. Nobody for residence forum in person either. Okay, thank you. All right, chair's report. I don't have a chair's report today. We'll move on to unfinished business. So we're gonna do policy 6A, which is about residence forum procedures. Deborah, did you want to give us a little intro on that?
Absolutely. So at your last meeting, Jeff provided a brief overview of the resident forum guidelines to be updated, and mostly in regards to representation by others. So a question arose regarding transparency and legitimacy when a speaker claims to represent other residents during the resident forum. And then the second item for consideration for revision of this housekeeping guideline is the email submissions. So the current process lacks clear guidelines for receiving and managing emailed statements to be read aloud during the meetings. So the proposed clarifications are in the revised attached version of the guidelines. And you'll see the red line requests that the changes that the residents must provide a written consent signed by the individual they represent, and the consent must accompany the speaker's forum slip and submitted to the board secretary during the GRF board meetings. And this could carry over to the committee meetings as well. Each speaker may represent only one additional resident to maintain fairness and prevent misuse. And really the intention of these measures to aim to ensure the transparency and confirm that legitimacy of the representation. In regards to the email submissions, the current practice that residents may submit these documents by email to the GRB@Rossmore account, and then the board secretary or myself will read them aloud during the meetings. But the process really does lack specific parameters. In this revised document, email submissions must be sent to grb@rossmore.com, received by 2 p.m. the day before the meeting. This really does align with the City of Walnut Creek Council practices. This is where we pulled some of this data from. Submissions received after that 2 p.m. deadline will not be read aloud, but it would be shared with the board members by having the staff forward that on to the full GRF board. Each email submission is still subjected to that 2-minute time limit. And if the content exceeds that limit, the reading will stop at that 2-minute mark. Also, the submissions must include that resident's full name and Rossmore address. And these really do provide that committee feedback from the January 14th meeting. So again, attached are some of the revisions. I'd love your feedback. Let me know if you like them or if you'd like to alter them at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee members, any questions for Deborah? James.
I'll comment on one of the
Sure.
items. Okay, I read through it and I'm looking at the email submissions. Item number 3 says each mail submission is subject to the same 2-minute time limit as live speakers, etc. I guess what I'm thinking about is that as I'm writing out emails to submit to the board, I could write, 100 words, 200 words, 500 words, 1,000 words, right? And I understand there's a 2-minute limit. Should we provide some guidance to the residents who choose to send emails, approximating how many words can normally be spoken in 2 minutes, so that they can try to put a concise message that will be read in its entirety so everybody can hear the message instead of, for example, I'll make it up. They write a 500-word message, and after 2 minutes, you may only get half of it read. So all of us here won't hear the rest of the message because the residents don't have guidance on how many words can we speak. And, you know, I talked about before, but, you know, on Google, it talks about in about a minute, a normal pace of reading aloud is about 140 words. So you take 2 minutes, okay, you know, depending upon what with late you search, it might be a little different, but 140 words. So 2 minutes is about 280 words. If we give some guidance, so they'll know that they'll try to keep it around 280 words if they want their entire message read. Otherwise, we're hearing a message, we don't hear the rest of the message, and everybody can interpret that message differently.
That's a great idea, because then it gets their message in the appropriate amount of time
Right.
versus putting a message, summarizing a message at the end and having it cut off possibly. So I like that idea.
I also like that idea a lot. So how many, you said 140 per minute? So
Well,
that would be,
Yeah, if you Google it,
yeah,
you get different answers, but you know, I came up with 140 a minute. So 280 in 2 minutes. And then the question you ask is 280 words adequate to convey a message? And I'm gonna go back to something I talked about a year ago, but in the Rossmore News, letters to the editor is limited to about 250 words or less.
okay.
And again, I've written letters to the newspaper. I consistently read the letters from other residents, and we're all about 250 words. And I believe that I was able to fully convey my message. I believe in reading other people's messages. I understand where they're coming from. 250 words is a little bit less than Google's 280 words. So maybe it's reasonable, 250, 260, somewhere in there.
So Deborah, logistically, do you think that would be feasible?
Absolutely, I can definitely add a approximation of 250 words to assist the speaker, and I can revise that language in that line item number 3 under email submissions.
Great. Did you want to add anything to that? Nope. Any other comments?
I think it's all reasonable and fun.
The rest seems reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's good to have it spelled out too, so there's no confusion.
I had a question for Deborah on in-person forum instructions, item number 3. When someone is speaking on behalf of another resident and we're asking for consent, assigned consent from the person that is being represented, do we need to give the structure of that written consent to the resident? For instance, a line saying, I give name permission to read my comments as stated below, so that people know there needs to be some formality to it.
So you're looking for an example for the residents while they're reading this, a clear guideline. Sure, I can draft something for your review.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would too.
And I didn't think of this before, but should there be something on the residents forum slip that
Exactly,
indicates to
yeah.
to the secretary, Maxine on my right, that there's going to be another comment read by that speaker?
I think my thoughts were exactly aligned with yours, Leanne. I was going to do a little snippet of in the language in this area, but on the resident forum slips, I was going to include an area so that they understand the formality of the steps. So the name, the address, and who they consent and what it's in regards to. So I'll have it on both forms.
Okay,
Okay,
Just a question.
that's great.
James has a question.
Question, on this issue of a resident can speak on behalf of another resident, does that mean that hypothetically, I can make my 2-minute talk and then say, oh, by the way, I want to now speak on behalf of somebody else? I can, or
Only allows you to speak on behalf of one other person.
but not myself at the same time.
Yeah, yourself.
You
sure.
can speak for yourself.
Now, to myself, I'm done with my 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, I come up again to speak on behalf of Jory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so technically, I can do that.
Twice,
Okay.
yeah.
So in the order of speakers, with the person speaking for themselves, then have the next slot to speak for the person there.
Yes, typically they hand it in at the same time. That's what
That would be
happens in
easiest.
board meetings.
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, yeah.
What else? In the policy under Zoom forum instructions, number 2, there's the statement that residents can type their comment in the Q&A chat feature. That's not really related to residents forum, so should that be included there or?
Believe
as-
it or not, it is tied. Quite often I get residents who are proposing to speak, but don't want to unmute themselves. They sometimes ask me to read it aloud. They're embarrassed, they're shy. If you don't want to allow that anymore, we can certainly remove that option. And I would just go ahead and try and unmute them and say, you know, these are your only options, is to basically unmute yourself and speak or submit it by email, you know. But it was just an additional avenue if people all of a sudden got a little shy during the meeting. Sometimes that happens.
Okay, yeah, if it works that way, that's fine.
So you'd like to keep it in?
I'm sorry?
So you would like to keep it in?
Keep it in.
Okay,
I understand that. Let's see, okay, and then under Zoom forum instructions, item number 4. It's about residents speaking on behalf of another resident, providing the signed written consent.
Same thing.
And then this must be submitted to the board's secretary. You say by the deadline outlined below.
The Tuesday.
Okay, so now
in
we're
the
talking about
submissions.
Zoom.
yes, so if they were over Zoom and they wanted to speak on behalf of another person, and oftentimes people don't know how to manage Zoom. So they go to their neighbor's home or they give their neighbor something that they've written up and they'll do it on their behalf to manage the Zoom portion. And so what I'm directing them to do is to look at that email submission deadline, right? So if that's not clear, I can definitely reword that better. But I'm pointing them to that 2 p.m. deadline the preceding day that they need to submit that even if they're over Zoom.
Okay,
Deborah, just a suggestion, but I think maybe just instead of saying to the deadline outlined below, repeat the deadline by 2 p.m. the day before the meeting.
Absolutely,
I
Yeah.
would recommend that.
And it clarifies it a little bit.
absolutely.
Okay, that's it for me. Do you have any other
No,
changes?
I'm good.
Nope, I'm fine with it.
All right, so these are minor changes. Do we still bring it back next month?
It's really up to you if you want to bring it back or if you feel comfortable with the edits, putting it forward. Deborah, you were gonna say something?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure, did you guys want me to send you maybe a draft of the insertion of those clarifying line items for the speaking on behalf of the representative language before I submit this to the board? Or did you want to review all of these changes at next month's meeting?
I don't, what?
No.
I was gonna say, I don't think we need to
You said-
review it again.
I would like to see all the changes.
You would,
Okay.
okay.
I would like to see the final
Alright,
verbiage of how it's stated,
Okay.
you know?
That's fine.
All right, so
That's
Deborah, if
good.
you could
Yeah.
send us that draft, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Most likely, we'll pass it on
We'll
to the
just,
board.
yeah, that's fine.
Or do we need a motion? for that?
Yeah,
Oh, we do?
I think we have to bring it back next month to your meeting and then you'll vote to send it forward.
All right,
Okay,
Change of plans. We'll bring it back next month.
I agree.
okay.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments? All right, we'll move on to item 6B, which is regarding GRF elections. And again, Deborah, did you want to give us an intro to that?
Absolutely. So this is procedure P 103.0, the GRF elections. And at your last meeting, which I couldn't attend, we provided a brief overview that our new legal counsel has noted there has been some law that a lot of the homeowner associations need to clarify whether they want to do paper balloting or electronic balloting. So legal counsel had proposed some items at your last meeting to alter it to just singularly look as if the board was going to only opt in electronically. Now, this meeting, I want to clarify that staff, myself and Jeff have really looked this over, and we're really recommending to not do that, to continue with paper balloting for many reasons. And so what we're asking today, I'll go over all of the reasons why, but just briefly, the overview is that we're not prepared to do electronic right now. And there's nothing that the board needs to do to change anything. There's no provisions needed. So the board is not required to permit electronic balloting. They can choose to continue doing this written or paper ballot, but it does need to kind of make a stance. So we can keep it as a status quo. And then for the main reasons for the not going the electronic route is basically the framework and compliance. I don't think that we're going to be able to manage all of that with NetSuite kind of in flux right now. We don't know the capacity of what it can and can't do with regards to the membership. The legal counsel had mentioned that we may need to get written privacy compliance from all 9,976 residents, which takes a toll on my small staff department. There's 2 of us. And right now it's unknown for the mutual how many staff people are actually managing this new format ballot, requesting their form 4041 to collect that information and voting preferences. We don't know that the project manager has the capacity to help us with this project right now with NetSuite kind of coming up and going. So the manpower, time load, workload, we were thinking, we don't know how many staff people and how many temporary assistants we would have to hire on an annual basis for this processing and mailing to all 9,000 residents. And so that's what our recommendation is to keep it alone, disregard all of these revisions, keep the procedure as is, and continue to do our paper balloting with the website options that are currently offered through the election inspection company. They offer a QR code for the residents and a password to log on to a website, and they're able to still vote electronically if that's their preference. But we don't have to make a clear stance that way. And you do not need to mail out a letter notifying the entire membership that you are doing the paper default. You can just continue as status quo because that's what we've been doing. Any questions?
Okay, well, you read my mind. I was glad to hear you say that. I just think logistically, it's not feasible at this point.
I agree.
Does
I
everybody
agree.
Okay,
No,
the
I
committee
agree.
agrees, so
Yes, I agree.
I think
Just,
we need to vote. We can just say the policy, the procedure stays the same.
It stands as written.
And but I
Just to-
want to thank staff for bringing it up because it's making everybody aware that this could happen in the future. And so it's just going to take some time. And the mention of NetSuite in the staff description just made me nervous. It's like one more thing.
Just to reinforce all of that, I attended a seminar last Friday, and this was one of the topics for all of kind of HOAs and so forth. And the recommendation really was, this is something to go slow with. I mean, this is brand new legislation. It hasn't been tested. It hasn't, all the kinks haven't been worked out. And in our situation specifically with the NetSuite implementation, it's just, so they're already, saying go slow. Electronic voting is something we want to be able to do.
Sure.
I mean, it's the future we want to implement, so it's definitely a goal, and this process will be before you not too long from now. But for this current period of time, we got to pause.
I did have a question about NetSuite and the emails. Emails are a big part of this procedure. After the full implementation of NetSuite, will we have better access to all the emails that are available?
If people give them to us. So you can't, you would be by default put into a paper ballot if you haven't provided your email address. So a lot of the email stuff, you can't access My Rossmore, you can't, a lot of the stuff requires an email, but we still, it's voluntary to give it. We can't require somebody to have an email address, but you can't access certain things without it.
So that would be a lot
Also,
less cumbersome later.
Yeah.
But I'd like to just add one bit of information that all new residents, as of I think 3 months ago, have been required to provide their email address to. So I think over time, with kind of rotation, all of the profiles will be updated with emails. So I'm thinking within 2 to 5 years.
Okay. What, 2 to 5 years, okay, that's good, that's what I was wondering. All right, anything else?
There is something. This was brought up in the Q&As that I read. There's no date for when a request for an absentee ballot. I think we need to put a date in. Right now, it just says you can request a date. I mean, you can request one, but there's no cutoff date.
Yeah.
And my concern is that somebody comes in like 3 days before the election and say, I want an absentee ballot. That's not going to work. So
Eventually.
I believe we need to establish a cutoff date.
Are you saying that should be included now?
Well, right now, in the current policy, it just says you can request an absentee ballot. But there's no date that says I have to request it by a certain time in order to get that.
And I
Right,
can help
sorry.
clarify.
Pardon?
And I can help clarify the current election inspection company's methodology with that. So they do offer an immediate email send. I give the company's information to the resident who wants to vote. I get that quite often. They're tied with their ID number and membership and address. They're given an email and a password and a code word to enter into the website and vote online. And they can do that up until the hour before. So there's not a real hard deadline up until that time frame.
Oh,
It's
so
4 p.m.
Okay, but from where you sit, do you want some time that says no more than 3 days before the election?
I've had, over the last 7, 8 years, I've had 2 people
Mhm.
reach out to me. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
But I mean, and who's to say the election inspection company won't offer that same thing? But I think moving electronically more and more so, that it's a nice option for residents that do have that last minute, oops, I am gone and I do want to vote. They call me or they send me an email and I get them in touch with the election inspection company and they reach out to them and they manage it personally one-on-one.
Okay, well, if you're saying it's not an issue for you, you don't foresee it being an issue,
No,
I don't need to make it an issue.
no, and they can one day mail it, next day air it, if,
Okay,
Okay, I'm okay.
all right, so just to summarize, we're leaving the procedure as is. And that concludes our agenda items.
Wow.
Anything else?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Our next meeting will be Monday, March 10th at at 1:30 right here in the boardroom. And I'll adjourn at 1:55. Thanks, everybody.